Hello everyone, and welcome to the showdown between the Dark Elves led by Malekith the Witch King and the High Elves, who are going to be led by Sherlock Holmes. So let's jump right into this match, guys, and have some fun. Now for the tale of the tape for the Dark Elves. In this match, we are indeed going to be going with the Smog build. As such, you can see we have 3 black dragons, so Malekith is going to be riding the mighty Seraphon, and he's going to be joined by 2 lesser black dragons. Well, they're probably of the same strength. I don't really know if there's a big stat differential between Seraphon and the black dragons, but I would assume from a lore perspective there is. So we have 3 dragons in total, and the dragons are pretty good against the High Elves, but mainly in this game, I've just been playing so many matches against High Elves with the Dark Elves, because, it's a very thematic matchup. People like to pick into it, and I've just been running into, Star Dragons and just all kinds of stuff like that up in the air. So in this match, I actually really wanted to try and overpower the High Elves in the air and really surprise them with a very heavy dragon presence. Unfortunately, my opponent did not bring any dragons for me to fight, but again, that gives me a little bit of impunity to go do the dragon breaths and different things like that. So let's go ahead and see how it does. But regardless, the dragons do have 80 armor, so against High Elf missiles, they will be somewhat durable, as High Elf archers and Lothar and Seaguard, pretty much every variant they have, has relatively low armor-piercing values, but they have great range. We still have to watch out for Nets and Tempest, but he did not bring Tempest. Tempest would have been a little bit more dangerous because it's an AoE effect, and had I blobbed up my dragons, it could have been very punishing. But he does have Teclis, who I called Sherlock Holmes simply because I'm forgetting his actual name now. What is it? Benedict... Oh, I don't even remember his actual name. I've been calling him Cumberbatch. Cumberbatch, I think, is his actual last name. But regardless, Teclis does have Nets of Amnitok, so you can get some net value. But again, Tempest might have been more punishing. But most Dark Elf players are a little bit wary to bring flying things simply because they have access to high magic. But we're going to be going with the 3 dragons. We have 2 of the Harganeth Executioners in the middle, a couple Bleak Swords just to shore up my ranks and fight against Spearmen and just kind of be a filler unit, and 2 Spearmen in the back to just hold against Cav, Silverhelms, Dragon Princes. They do have that charge defense and anti-large, so they can definitely take a beating from elite troops. That's pretty much it from my army. Malekith, of course, does have the Lore of Darkness, so we have Soul Stealer, which is a must bring. Obviously, he's going to be taking some damage in this combat here, so you really need to bring those tools, so we'll see how it does. And yeah, for the High Elves, it looks like they do have a front line of Spearmen on the flanks with 2 groups of Swordmasters of Hoeth here in the middle. Swordmasters of Hoeth against the Harganeth Executioners do win in a straight-up fight. You can see they have a massive stat advantage, 48, 48, 36 to, 34, 30, or 38, 34, 42. Both of us have a bonus for its infantry, but their baseline combat stats are just so much better, and I think they also have better leadership. It's about the same. In the secondary line, he does have a couple archers. Archers are a pretty good countermeasure against Dark Shards. They have far superior range at 180. They can usually get like 2 or 3 volleys off before the Dark Shards can even return fire. They're good against Shades, good against Witch Elves. Definitely a pretty safe pick in this matchup. And for his leadership, he does have Teclis, Sherlock Holmes, whatever you guys want to call him, Doctor Strange, just any Haggard Benedict reference. Teclis is very good with the Nets of Amnitok and Double Noble. So, for example, if I do land Malekith or any of my dragons out of position, and he's able to net me down and get a really good charge with these 2 nobles, he can absolutely drag me through the mud. So I really like that pick for my opponent. In the back, he does have 2 Silverhelms, probably realizing that the Dark Elf Cav forces aren't very good. I mean, Cold One Spear Riders tend to just rampage. If I'm not mistaken, I think they rampage. And honestly, most Dark Elf players don't even really bring those. Maybe some Dark Riders to harass, but Silverhelms should be pretty good at charging Bleak Swords and Harganeth and troops like that. So without further ado, guys, let's get this show on the road. So right now, as you guys can see, I do split up my dragons. Trying my best to not get caught with like a big overcasted net of Amnitok, which would pin down both my dragons. Granted, he only has 3 archers to my 3 dragons. It's not going to be a lot of stopping power. So the first breath attack comes in and just melts these guys. So you can see the Swordmasters of Hoeth. It was a very quick reaction. So by splitting up the dragons there, you can see he moved his forces just a second later. When you split up all 3 dragons, they're not really going to know where it's coming from. They have to constantly be moving their camera to see where the breath attack is going to be. So it makes it that much harder. So that one attack is going to be huge, because the Swordmasters of Hoeth have now lost their combat advantage versus the Harganeth Executioners, on top of losing a ton of models and HP, so we're in pretty good shape here. So that breath attack does good, but my opponent reacts pretty quickly. He does get a net of Amnitok, so Malekith is going to start taking some, not huge damage, but it's definitely going to add up. These guys have very good range, so they can pretty much, shoot from like right in this general area. In the meantime, my other dragon is going to get a breath attack right here, and this was good for me because I was kind of forcing my opponent out, which means there's going to be separation between his backline defenses and his cav and different units like that. So the dragons, I don't have to take any risk and go near the nobles. I can just go fight in the front line and have them attack the Swordmasters and troops like that. But you can see one bad situation with Malekith, he takes about half of his HP and damage, and the bounce power is still pretty even. In the frontline fight, you can see that the Harganeth Executioners, where they were formerly at a disadvantage, are now going to be able to pretty easily win this engagement versus the Swordmasters of Hoeth, considering they're so darn beat up. Looks like there's going to be a fiery convocation going down for my opponent. So basically, I just pull my dragons back, and I'm going to be re-engaging them here in the front line. So fiery convocation coming down. You can see my bleak swords at 82 models, and let's see how it goes. And a very nice breath attack right there is going to probably let those spearmen win that engagement. But from here, I realize his only powerful troops left that can really do a lot of damage to my infantry are these swordmasters. So I just basically grab these two dragons, and I just kind of methodically push them around and have them start gooning those swordmasters out. In the meantime, I'm using my dread spears to kind of screen out the silver helms and just keeping Malekith busy. You can see I did get a Gaze of Malice here in the back, which is his bound AoE spell, and it does quite a bit of damage against these archers. And you can see they've taken some pretty substantial losses. And Malekith is just such a powerful lord. That ability is so damn good. So the Harganeth executioners that have broken through the front line have engaged here, and my opponent was using the nobles and reserves, probably assuming I was going to come after Teclis or maybe go after some of these archers in the back, but realizing he had ample defenses back there, just take advantage of the fact that I have these giant lizard creatures that have wings, and from there I just kind of move out. So I made a bit of a mistake here. Malekith went to go fight with some bleak swords, but my opponent got a really nice charge with these silver helms and was able to separate Malekith from his reinforcements, and from there I actually get netted down. So Malekith is pinned, and I think the nobles are relatively close by. You can see they're actually trying to push through these Harganeth executioners and get to the cookie jar. And you can see Malekith has taken enfeebling foe as well, so he's taken a lot of damage from the archers, from some of these silver helms and spears, and here comes the two nobles. So this was a very scary situation. And on that same note, I'm basically using my dragons. You can see I got two breath attacks in the back, each of which roasts one of those archers pretty badly and sends them scurrying off the battlefield. Bounce power is still relatively even, maybe a little bit in my favor from the beginning, although it seemed like my opponent did start ahead of me. So he's actually able to break Malekith, so those two nobles just doing a ton of work. So right here, realizing I have a bit of a pincer. So I have some spears, I have some bleak swords, and the dragons obviously have enough support to really comfortably engage. I push in here and I'm like, this is all he has left. I have the infantry advantage, I have Harganeth here, I have a group of 43 here, 40 right here, a ton of bleak swords, and the dragons, you can see they're just going to start monster mashing on these nobles. Still though, I'm taking some damage in return. These high elf spears, obviously dragons have 80 armor, but it's not like 100 armor or 110, so the spear damage will add up a little bit. Thankfully, my reinforcements are coming in, which should break a lot of these high elf forces. But again, another reinforcing group of swordmasters comes in from the back. I do break one noble, but Benedict is still in okay shape, so there still could be another fiery convocation right here, and I'm not sure what other spells. So he has regrowth and enfeebling foe, so perhaps a heal of some sort. But one of my dragons is taking a lot of damage. You can see he's down to about 40% HP. The one noble is still in there fighting. Silver helms, I'm surprised. They're actually sticking in there and doing quite a bit of work. So Malekith, in the meantime, I'm just kind of circling overhead. I know it's too dangerous to land, but here comes a fiery convocation. So if you look here, I do have my Harganeth executioners and other troops, and at this point I was like, all right, I just got to accept my fate. So here comes the raging, angry Phoenix, just roasts right down my line there and eviscerates an entire formation of those Harganeth. And you can see my bleak swords and dread spears are actually going to rout right here. So Malekith and his dragon buddy, I'm like, all right, you guys aren't really doing much, so let's get you guys starting to chase down Teclis so he can't just sit there comfortably, kind of cackle at me. But we do get the other noble. So this noble's pretty beat up. I think the other noble is almost off the battlefield. It looks like he's broken. He may rally here in the fourth quarter, but again, he doesn't have too much stopping power. And I do have a full health dragon. And you can see the putrid breath coming down and roasting those silver helms from the black dragon. And it just releases my inner Timmy. And for any of you guys that played Magic the Gathering, there's like, decks that just play a bunch of big creatures. That's like the same thing with like using dragons. It's just like there's something inherently simple and fun about it. Granted, you do have to micro and time your breath attacks well and make sure you don't get caught out, but still, there's just some simple fun to using these type of builds. But regardless, we do get in there. We're able to goon the Spearman. Malekith does get a Soul Stealer off, which is going to be nice. But again, another net for my opponent. So despite the fact that the bounce power is very heavily in my favor, he's still fighting until the fourth quarter, which is always nice to see. And you can see Malekith is in a little bit of danger, but from here, the elves, well, I should say the high elves, are going to get smacked with army losses. So let's go ahead and take a look at the breakdown, guys, and see what was going on. So, I think the dragon build, probably caught him off guard. I would say that his build was, very well rounded. He had spearmen in the front line, which is standard to kind of hold things up while the swordmasters did most of the heavy lifting. And obviously, against a more standard high elf build, your archers are going to outrange the dark shards. You should have a pretty good frontline engagement if you so decide to go with swordmasters. But yeah, I think the dragons are a little bit better than the Hydra here. But if you are going to go with Malekith on a dragon, you need to be very careful and overinvest in dragons. Otherwise, a single star dragon will just give you the business. If they have a high magic mage, you're pretty much assuring your doom. So there is some danger to be had there. But yeah, the breath attacks were huge. We were able to do massive damage in the beginning against the swordmasters, which I think in the long run allowed our Harganeth executioners to really pay for themselves and beyond, push through, pressure the archers. But again, just cycling the dragons in and out of melee, making sure to optimize all of your breath attacks. In that game, we actually got all 9 of our breath attacks off. 2 against the Swordmasters. We killed the archers with him. Malekith's Gaze of Malice was doing a ton of work, so you really need to make sure to optimize those breath attacks. But I really liked his build in regards to the nobles and Teclis. I think that was a pretty good countermeasure. And had I slipped up a little bit more, had he been in perhaps a better position when I landed, I could have taken serious losses and maybe even lost a dragon right out of the gates. I think maybe here it might be worth it to get the Lothern Seaguard. I think the anti-large would have been pretty helpful. Granted, they still would have died to the same stuff, the breath attacks and the Gaze of Malice, but yeah, it was definitely a fun build. I'm trying to think of my high elf build against Dark Elves. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's been quite a bit of time since I played that. So I'll try my best to get a high elf versus Dark Elf game in the next couple days to show you guys the builds I'd like to use before. And we can go from there. So thanks again. Very well played to Double Tap Taco. Definitely great. I had to process that one for a second. So definitely well played, man. Look forward to running into you again on ladder. And hopefully you guys enjoyed seeing Malekith the Witch King in action. Have an excellent night, guys, and take care.